Hey, and welcome back to another episode of When the Cleats Come Off. I have Jennifer Schwartz in the house. So excited to have you here.
Hello, hello.
Hello. She is also a podcaster, so very excited to have two podcasters in the room.
I mean,
Kind
it's
of,
like a party. Yeah.
it is a party. And I think podcasting has a lot to do with just being curious. And I know you're a very curious person as well. So earlier, before people can hear your voice, I gave them the rundown on everything that you do. I'm so grateful that our podcast editor, Seth, got us together because there's so much commonalities between our work.
Yep.
And I think they're just going to learn so much from you. Can you start us off with just a little bit of your journey, like your sports journey and your fitness journey, so the audience can get to know you a little more?
Yes. Hi. I'm excited to be here and I just love I like to honor people's especially women's their journey in sport and exercise. We're just living in such a grand era, like we just celebrated 50 years of what do you call it? Title
Title nine.
IX.
Yep.
Yeah, like last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually at the soccer game where um, the agreement was signed for equal pay. And
Wow.
Billie Jean King was there. And I was like, wow, like she's part of my journey for sure. Like her book was like the first one I picked up when I was an adolescent, and she, it was a really basic kind of like, this is how you take care of your body. And it wasn't tennis specific. I don't play tennis, but it just spoke so much to me. So I just want to give a shout out to like last week kind of being huge and honoring all
Mm-hmm.
the female athletes that um of our generation and this, all the current and future ones. So I grew up playing soccer and softball, and I I thrived in both team sports. And where I grew up, Aberdeen, Maryland has and Havre de Grace, Maryland have a strong baseball culture. Like Cal Ripken is from there. The
Mm.
Ripken Stadium is there now, and he has a strong presence. The Ripkins were part of like I played softball with a Ripken niece, and we had like it was just a part of the culture where I grew up. But soccer ended up being my college sport, and I did try to walk on and play softball. But I played soccer, passionately until probably uh 24 years old. I had a serious death in my family about 20, and multiple injuries starting when I was 15. I still managed to play college and a little bit of semi-professional soccer afterwards. And then at 23, 24 is when I started coaching soccer and also realizing the huge impact that American women have across the world in female athletics. I really see female athletes as a like a warrior for change, and how we can like I really see our influence all over the world. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really understand that until I traveled and played soccer elsewhere in the world and really saw like this, you know, interconnectedness and how we impact, females everywhere. And so I think about that often. I really do, especially when I went to that game I just mentioned where the equal pay agreement was signed, was a U.S. women's national team game. And, it was really like I feel it, and it's just like such a beautiful interconnectedness that I feel with female athletes. But, my fitness journey started when I first got injured. And, with books like Billie Jean King's and Natra, oh God, what's her name? There's another tennis, I cannot say her name, it's Russian. She had a book too that I fell in love with. Martina Natra oh my god, I'm just gonna butcher it. Anyways, it's
That's
just, like,
okay. We'll
pop
look it up
yeah.
and
It's, like,
put it in the show
decades
notes
old.
later.
It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
honestly. I'm just, like, having a flashback. Um, and, um, I fell in love with fitness because I had a knee injury. Secondarily, I also realized that I was kind of boy crazy and there were a lot of men at the gym. So if you combine those 2 things, that's how I fell in love with exercise, and I fell in love with routine, and it was a really even though I was, like, a soccer player and a softball player, and I was in color guard, and I was in band, I kind of I honestly had a flow of routine, but not until I found, like, reps and sets did I really start to, like, get it and really fall in love with focused work. And yeah, and then that sent me on a path of meditation, yoga. I was doing acupuncture when I was like 18. I was like, do it all. Like, I wanted to try everything. And I'm still in that zone. Like, I think wellness and fitness should be fun. I don't think it should be a punishment. I don't think it should be, um, I don't think it should weigh us down, and that's kind of my mission now is to like teach people this like uplifting state of mind about self-care, exercise, athletics. And I spent so back to like my timeline, I guess, when I was coaching soccer, I had a strong focus on female athletes and strength training and injury prevention. But I was also coaching in the game. Like I had teams and I was, the head coach, Jen. I was the head coach
Mhm.
and doing all the things and doing all my studies of, where I am now, which is a muscle activation techniques RX practitioner and a studio owner, a clinic owner. um, and I also developed a strength and conditioning program for soccer players that I thought was going to be just for females, but it turns out there's there's a whole nother group of people. Um, and I fell in love with coaching them too. Met young male soccer players, like they have a special piece of my heart now, which I never thought was going to happen. So I've had a ton of experience. I've probably trained thousands of adolescent, teenage, and upwards of in early 20s, semi-professional type of soccer players in strength and conditioning. And my clinic is mostly muscle activation techniques and neuromuscular exercise, more rehab focused, more injury prevention focused, and recovery focused. So I have lots of things I can talk about.
Well,
That's
that's
my
why you're
journey.
here.
Yeah.
I'm excited because most of these topics that you do a lot of, we haven't really spent a whole lot of time on the podcast talking about. Um, but I would really like you to just what is injury prevention? Because I don't know if everybody, I mean, we know what it sounds like, but like I think rehab and injury prevention, they obviously are simultaneous, but they're two separate things.
Mm,
And I feel like if we can spend some time on the injury prevention side, we'll find that our athletes don't get injured as much.
mhm.
So like, can you talk about the difference between rehab and injury prevention a
Yeah.
little bit so the audience can get to know those two things?
Well, I think it's important to say the headline here is like preventing injury 100% is not possible. Preventing pain is not possible. These things make us human. And I say like the injuries make us human because like they can heal. They can regenerate. And and that goes from everything from a bone to our brain to muscle, tendon. And uh pain is also very important part of being human.
Mhm.
It really um and it helps. I think it's important to also understand what resilience and fragility is in terms of injury prevention, um because we can feel fragile for many different reasons. And when we feel fragile, we're going to feel kind of more tightness and more pain and more exhaustion and, just like physically, like, heavy.
Mhm.
So fragility, is an outcome of something that is mental, emotional, physical, maybe even chemical. And everything that we experience, really, our reality, like, goes into like those four things. It's like our perception, our chemical, our meaning like our nutrition, um and maybe anything toxic we've been exposed to, like all those things can like change our body and change our perception and change our reality. So can mental, thoughts, emotional, uh anything emotional like changes our body,
Mhm.
changes our perception, and physicality as well. So I think when we think about injury prevention, it's important to understand that there are two different states and we can contribute to one or the other. So, contributing to something called resilience um, means, having that growth mindset, having the growth mindset as to, your wins and your losses, your daily wins, your daily losses. It also has something to do with the weight room and how you treat your body. If you treat yourself like a fragile, spring flower, you're going to get trampled on pretty easily, right? Like, but if you treat yourself with that growth mindset, with respect to, you know, pain, injury is a possibility, and you want to do everything possible, everything within your condition and within your grasp to prevent that, you're going to contribute to a stronger body, a more resilient body, a more resilient mind. Injury recovery and rehab rely heavily on a growth mindset and being resilient. It's I wouldn't have a job if all we had to do was 8 weeks of rehab to an
Mm.
injury. I wouldn't have a
Mhm.
job because then it would be like, okay, move on. But our tissues, meaning our tendons and our joints, like rehab and like we have like, I want this is very, um, what is it? I'm glossing over this and like this is a huge topic within it, but have like some sort of memory and
Mhm.
emotion and connection to our emotion that will contribute to a successful outcome of rehab. So really injury prevention is um is like this practice of going towards resilience. And so we can talk about that in the context of everything from hydration to sleep to strength and power. Um, man. And doing it without like gadgets, we have to like it all comes from like these focused efforts that are with tools already within us,
Mhm.
if that makes any sense.
Oh,
Um,
it makes total sense.
yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes down to that resilience that you're talking about, I'm glad you're diving into this. This is kind of unique and fun. Um, Athletes that get tend to like find themselves injured often. Um, which I'm sure you find people that like, yeah, you're in here a lot more than others. Um, is there something that is it because that they believe that they're weak that they're getting injured? Is it because like where do you find like the biggest reasoning behind injuries are
Okay,
coming from?
this is a hot take. I'm so excited to share this. I hate to say it, but sometimes it comes from the parents.
Mm,
Our belief in pain and injury and our body comes from what our parents are handing down to us. If
sure.
a parent has chronic pain, the likelihood of their child having persistent pain is like upwards of 60%.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's probably goes the other way for, like, the parent that, like, shows discipline and exercise habits and nutrition habits. So, yeah, and so it's just like I did not understand that until I was thick deep into into the program at the soccer club where I was working with whole families on injury prevention, strength training, injury rehab, and the whole continuum of it. Um, I would have parents come to as many sessions, especially at the beginning. Like if I had them for 3 sessions, like twice in 1 week, and then the next week in like an athletic training kind of environment, I would have the parents come to at least two of those, and we would have also conversations offline. And I just wasn't ready for like how much reflection I saw in their attitude towards their child's attitude.
Mm.
So that's one. Um, Sleep is another. Stress and sleep have a huge impact on your body. Um, anything below like 7 hours of sleep can increase your injury likelihood. Like, I want to say like 40%.
Geez.
It's really important. So that seven, I mean, and teenagers, it's like, 8, 9 hours of sleep.
Mhm.
7 hours uninterrupted sleep is it has to be like a priority for
Is that when you said teenagers, is that because they're growing more in that stage?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
they need to be sleeping more?
yeah. Like I have a
Okay.
puppy who's 8 months old and they're supposed to be sleeping like 18 hours a day.
Jeez.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, teenagers, especially because it's their brain that's developing at this time. Most humans are kind of let's say this, tendons are fully formed by the age of 17. And so, um, but sleep and so sorry, the brain is not fully grown. I think like what is it like 25 to
Yeah,
27
I think
years
I
of age?
remember
Yeah.
hearing 25. Yep.
Yeah, and, like, we all kind of remember that because it's like the car insurance quote, like, you can't like, it changes drastically, like, after the age of 25, and so does,
Mhm.
like, your ability to rent a car. Um, so, yeah, the brain that's growing, and especially at the teenage years, it's doing something rapidly called pruning, and what that means is, it kind of explains like the drastic mood swings. It explains like the risk taking and the boundary pushing. And sleep, facilitates so much of that, like growth and pruning. And in adults, I guess this is probably for everyone. In our brains have has its own lymphatic system, so that means all the trash is getting taken out at night. So by you and I just sitting here in front of these lights, we are creating a small amount of brain damage, and that is in a state of brainwave called high beta, and it's a very normal scenario. It happens every day. But if we don't recover from that at night and our brain waves don't like go into like a theta state, then it's not really getting cleaned out, and it's like constantly in this state of like the trash is overflowing,
Mm.
which is
Yeah.
not good. It's not good for development, for muscle recovery, for muscle strength. It's not good for emotions. It's not good for our digestion. Like it's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I know you're blowing many people's minds, including mine, with some of these things, but can we go back to, like, the parents and how influential they are and how their kids can, um, I
Yeah.
guess just, like,
I'm gonna pull up a study actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible study because I think I even just saw something, it may have been on TikTok, I'm not gonna lie,
Uh,
that had something to do with the fact that, if your kid, like, let's say, falls and bumps their knee, and you go over to them and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like, are you
yep.
okay?" they immediately start crying because there's something wrong. Instead of if they bump their knee, and of course, like there's a big difference between like they have a huge gash in their knee and then like just
Mm.
like got a little bruise. But like that resilience factor of just being like, "You all right?" And they're just like, "I think so." Like they can kind of navigate that, but they do what their parents are showing them. And parents and coaches alike. Like how
Mm.
we treat our kids when they go through some sort of tough moment is
Yeah.
really important. And I think it goes along with what you were mentioning earlier too.
No, so yeah, it does go a long way. If you Yeah, it's like it's got to be like, helicoptering an injury is like not great. Like, how's it feeling? It's like the car ride home, right, from the game. What did you do wrong? Like, we know that statement like totally messes with a player.
Yeah.
Go over what you did wrong. And that it's the same kind of thing for injuries. It's like, okay, so how did your ankle feel? Oh, I didn't feel it until now. And like,
Mm,
um, so like, and so on the counter end of that, so the neuromuscular technique that I do is called muscle activation techniques. And any players that have access to someone that does muscle activation techniques, please take advantage of it. It is incredibly powerful um, work for or body work for athletes, people that move, people that exercise in general. So there's not many of us. So if there's someone nearby, go say hi to them and talk to them about your tightness, and they'll be able to help you, and you won't have to like suffer basically. So with that said, I would have a player come to my table, the athletic training table, and they would be, kind of limping and without swelling, without a contusion, without any bruising. They would just have this pain in like the top of their foot. And so that is an experience, right? And they're feeling it, and their body is creating a protective mechanism, and they're limping. So I do my work. Let's say it takes 15 minutes for me to activate underactive muscles and reestablish a neuromuscular connection. And they get off the table, and they can run with no pain.
mhm.
So as easily as I can influence that, you can also influence it the other way and create more compensation and more limp from like babying it,
Okay.
And like and sometimes that gets that player some attention, and they're like, "Oh, this is a resource." Like, I am now getting attention. So there's like that way of, creating a horrible cycle of trying to get attention through an injury,
Right.
or trying to stop, or they're like like we all know male soccer players are famous for manipulating the referees, They're like,
I'm
"Oh,
not gonna lie, I watched the Bundesliga and yes, I
yes.
can see
Yeah.
it. Mhm.
Yeah." And
Like, how do you know when they're really injured is the hard part.
and men turn it on. And so you can also talk about this in hockey. There's one guy that's like they purposefully piss everyone off. I don't know if it's like happening these days, but certainly like, another generation of ice hockey, there was a player that was like bruising everybody up and, looking for trouble. And that would create chaos.
Mhm.
So I think there's like a similar way to manipulate, in all sports, basically. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
there's, like, an
you know,
emotional aspect to it that, like,
yeah.
nobody talks about.
And like, when I was a player, a softball player, I was lead off batter, right? If I can skew something just enough to get on base and get that reward, why, I don't know. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
competitive. I'm going to try it. I'm going to push that boundary. So,
Yeah.
I think we could have that conversation in the injury context too, and also, congratulate some players for being really creative, but also, you know, um use it as a teaching moment. So anyways, that was a lot of different scenarios in there, but like back to like with the parents and um their belief in pain does impact their child's belief in pain. And there's a whole new arm of science called pain neuroscience. And pain neuroscience is has to be one of the most underrated medical interventions out there, because you can basically do pain education for people and decrease their pain without touching them, without giving them a pill. And this has
Mm,
been proven in so many different scenarios, and including in middle. So when we go back to like our age, we there has been a study and a follow-up study on middle schoolers receiving pain science lectures. So not even like real education, they're just getting lectures, right? They're not like having to do homework or like experiment or like really take in what they're getting taught. So just lectures. 30 minutes of lectures. And this is like 5th grade to 8th graders. And this was 133 middle schoolers, 5th to 8th grade, attended a 30-minute pain neuroscience lecture. The primary outcome measures of pain knowledge, which was judged by a questionnaire, and their beliefs regarding pain, like a rating scale, were measured before and immediately after the lecture. Significant improvement in knowledge was found with their test scores improving, and like their, they had significant shifts in the beliefs. So they also did a follow up on this, which I don't have in front of me, but just 30 minutes of pain neuroscience lecture to these children, just it gave them much more belief in their body and a significant increase in their knowledge of pain, that meaning like it goes away.
mhm.
And the more that we think about pain, the more it becomes like an actual thing, even
Yeah.
if there's no tissue damage. And that's because pain is made in the brain. And that's a very important thing that like we should understand as people that have brains and bodies. Pain is made in the brain. Pain is not made at the tissue site. So if I hit myself on my wrist right now, there's no pain being made here. It's being made here and sent here.
Mm,
So that means there is a whole entire body of science dedicated to showing us how pain gets increased and how it lives on in our body through our thoughts and our emotions. So this is not like woo woo anymore. Because if I would have said this 20 years ago, somebody been like, "Where's your crystals? Where's your cat and your witch
right.
hat?" You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
it's not like this is like legit laboratory work, follow up work. Um, I could go on and on. I'm very passionate about pain science
Yeah.
because
So
I just I'm the enormous cost of you know opioid use and like our self esteem and our mental health are just too much. It's just too much. And just education can really change that. So it's like a whole
yeah.
nother reason to like podcasts, right?
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about, you said you had your injury, your knee injury.
Mhm.
And obviously you probably didn't know any of this stuff then.
Mm-mm.
When you
Huh.
went through your knee injury, how was that for you? Like physically, mentally, all the things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I ripped up my knee pretty bad skiing, and then I went and played soccer. So I had the opposite problem. I was like, screw it. I don't
Yeah.
know. This thing's swollen. I don't know what that means. So my childhood it was unique in that I was kind of like let loose. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of,
Like coddling or anything?
none. I mean, the opposite. I didn't have any rules. Where the wild things are was my childhood.
Yeah.
Um, the Jungle Book, it's things like that. And, and yeah, I was just a product of, um, like, being like not having enough guidance and validation and comfort. So risk taking for me was extremely normal.
Mhm.
And it was very normal for people around me when I was a kid to like break their arm. Like, I was pushing the boundaries with my body from a very young age. Like, I was that kid, like flying off like the tree and like, climbing up and jumping down and like, wow.
Yeah.
um, so, and so my injury was a learning process in boundaries. Um, and it had some serious consequences, like ACL injury requires basically a 2 to 3 hour surgery, and it accelerates the arthritis at that knee joint. Um, I can't remember the number, but oh, I can't remember. I'll get it up here in a second. But it accelerates the onset of arthritis. And so what that means is by the age of 25, if 10 years after the surgery, you're gonna have significant signs of arthritis. So an accelerated rate of arthritis. So basically we all kind of get arthritis. It's just like the wrinkles on the inside of our joint.
Mhm.
It's not like a freak, like crazy thing that just happens. Like, it is it is very normal to have it, and it's very normal to have it and not have pain. Um, but meaning the wear and tear. Arthritis itself is a inflammation process. And so when you feel that, that means like your joints have kind of accelerated the aging process, basically. So anyways, so for me, it was a major turning point in my life because it was the first real like lesson that I had. I
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of teaching moments. It for me, like it was always like just take risk and just do whatever you want and screw it. And so there was just many variations of that lesson over and over and over again. The knee injury taught me a lot of discipline, and man, and it also opened up a whole entire curiosity about the body.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I
Silver
wasn't.
lining.
Yeah, yeah, I don't regret that at all. And I don't regret going down those moguls in ice. Like, I don't at all. And it taught me a lot about bone health in my early 20s, because I understood that arthritis was like part of this process that I was experiencing and feeling. And I started learning about bones, and then I started learning about nutrition, and then I started learning about um, sleep and even birth control, and that had a part in all of this. Um, and just medicine in general. And it like I just learned so much about me, the system, and it's just never stopped since then. So now I'm 40, and both my ACLs are torn. So I retore that right knee ACL.
Wow.
And then I tore the left one. And the left one I tore playing soccer because I wasn't done playing soccer yet. And
Mhm.
then and then I just never got it repaired. I was like, "Oh, I'm done with that." Because I got the right one. It tore once when I was 15. Had another surgery at 19 because it wasn't like done right. And then or they cleaned it up. And then I had and then it um and then that repaired, reconstructed ligament retore. And I never got that repaired. And
Wow.
I
So,
know.
like, so I know some people are probably like, "Well, how are you walking?" Like,
I have no pain.
wow.
I can run. I'm very agile. There's a lot of that's definitely a good question, and we can kind of go into that if you want to talk about anatomy. But the main thing is that I'm not playing soccer. I'm not going to play soccer. I'm not interested in skiing. Um, I'm not interested in water skiing. I think getting
Mhm.
pulled behind a motorized vehicle is absolutely nuts. I can't believe anybody does it, but especially especially with like a knee condition, like I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
I enjoy my life. I love to lift weights. I love to lift them heavy. I love to go deep in my squats. I love to play golf and be a dog mom. So, and I'm on my feet all day. But it did, I didn't really have any issues. There was a lot of micromanaging when I was coaching soccer because I was doing those dynamic cuts and movements, but I never
Mhm.
had like a um like a total backwards like moment there because I was micromanaging. So I'm not gonna
Sure.
lie, like it's not. But now I have no problems. I don't even think about.
Yeah. So, for those who maybe don't know the structural anatomy of how you're able to do all these things without getting a surgery,
Hmm.
obviously you had to shift maybe how you lived a little bit, like you couldn't play soccer anymore. But you're at an age where you didn't have to, you could find other things and hobbies.
Hmm.
Um, but I think most people are probably wondering, like, how? Like, how are you
Okay.
able to lift weights? Um,
So yeah, the muscles are the best analogy I've heard is that you know the so the ligaments are like guardrails. So you don't use the guardrails unless your car goes off,
mm,
right?
yeah.
Off the lane. So the muscles control that. The muscles are the steering wheel and the steering
Mm,
the whole system. So the muscles have to be able to react and decelerate. So if my knee has a moment of going medial, where that ACL would be the guardrail, my muscles are super responsive and super strong. So my hamstring tendons are probably thicker than most people in
okay.
general because
Yeah.
I spent so much time building up that tendon tissue because I don't have guardrails.
Mhm.
So imagine like I'm putting a little bit of an extra bumper on the car.
Yo, that makes I love your analogies, by the way. No, that makes total sense. And that's so cool. So, when it comes down to I'm deciding whether I wanna go to recovery or injury prevention and, like, hammer it real quick. But
Well, yeah, they're that we can call them the same. I
yeah,
think recovery is more important because
right,
you don't have injury prevention without good recovery.
right. Like, with good recovery, you're less likely to get injured. So,
Mhm.
let's kind of dive into that aspect. And obviously, because of your injury, you dove into so many other ways to that if you could go back, you'd probably spend more time on
Mm,
if you were younger. So I know you mentioned yoga, meditation, sleep, hydration.
mm.
Um, these are all important aspects, but what are they specifically? Like, especially because I know people think of yoga and they're like, oh, well, that's like frou frou. But like in reality, it's just stretching,
Mhm. Mhm.
along with, taking time to add a little bit of that meditation and just self-awareness. But I know you're huge on that one, so maybe let's
Mhm.
just start with yoga and the importance of it.
Um, well, I mean, I think yoga is an interesting way to get recovery in. I'll put it that way.
Mhm.
It's not for everybody, you know. Um, but paying attention to your body is for every athlete. And so
Mhm.
yoga is like this really interesting way to do that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it is it's a proven system to pay attention to your body and listen to your movement and work on your breath. And also it has this built-in reflection piece and gratitude piece. Like, I mean, for a moment, like, how lucky are we, you and I, to express ourselves physically, have a bank account, have property, and be fully ourselves on the internet with, like, Instagram is like a PR factory. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
how lucky are we to have all those things? And so when we talk about the female athlete, how lucky are you to have peers that understand you, that have a similar goal as you, that have your back? Ugh. I mean, you are all so lucky to have a community like that, and teammates and friends and people who are going to forgive you when you screw up. You know, like, amazing. Like, you're not going to get your hand chopped off, right? Like, wow. um and and so, like, yoga has this, like, built-in way of, like, teaching us this, and
Mhm.
humility and gratitude and reflection. And so when it comes to the body, like, honoring your body is a beautiful thing. And I just, like, if that's the way you're going to do it, like, that's it for me in yoga. Like, that's all. um Balancing on one leg, great practice, tree poses, all that thing. Great, great.
Mhm.
Um so is, being able to do a shavasana, which is like move from a plank to, jump forward on your feet. Like, it's a very athletic move, right? So being practicing that and that kind of stuff, getting pushing your wrist motion to its limit in a different way is a very good thing,
Mhm.
so all these things are, like, good, but I think it all comes down to, like, getting to know your body and honoring it and reflecting on where you are as a player and, like, your goals and, like, your losses and your rebounds.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate self-care, and I find too that yoga tends to help me mix the mind and the body together in regards to pushing yourselves further than you would even feel it.
Yeah.
Like if you're holding a warrior pose for like 2 minutes,
Mhm.
which at the beginning I could definitely not do, but I feel like I can push myself further now because I'm like, I think I can stay here longer. Like you find this sense of like resilience while in those
Mm.
poses too,
Mhm.
that like you realize you're tougher than you think you are. And I find
Mhm.
that's another aspect of yoga and kind of like a different type of yoga. Like there's, you know, more of the recovery type of yoga. There's like,
Mhm.
you're going to build up a sweat type of yoga, holding poses. Like there's so much different elements of it. But
Yeah,
ironically,
exactly. Yeah.
one of my good friends who lives out in California, I had her on the podcast kind of a long time ago, but her name's Kelia Snare. She like specializes in yoga for catchers, which I think
Oh,
is like so unique because like catchers are in a squat all day long. Like
yeah.
their bodies are pushed a lot harder than most people on the field.
Yep.
So for those of you who are like, where's that episode? I'll tag it in the show notes. But I think there's so much unlocking of
Hmm.
yourself that you can find in yoga.
Yeah, exactly. And so that brings up an interesting point. Okay, so recovery. I think because we're talking about, like, catchers. So if they play the whole game, usually, in the pros you definitely don't see catchers moving in and out of like the lineup,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm. And you have
um
kids playing 3 games a day behind the
yeah.
plate.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a client that's a catcher, and I just, yeah, I see all kinds of he has multiple complaints, like, and so, um anyways, so that brings to mind, this important, like, understanding of recovery, like, and taking responsibility for, how to take responsibility for recovery and how much you basically stress the body.
Hmm.
So, like, one, we're not fragile, you know, things. Like, humans are very tough. Like, obviously we've lasted a long time, and we all go through a lot, and we bounce back and we wake up the next day and it's a new day. And so, but what is important is to realize that sports by itself and participating in sports, and parents, listen to this, are not healthy. Mm. Health does not equal sport. Sport does not equal health.
Hmm.
And so I work with professional athletes, and some of them are extremely unhealthy and also able to perform. Um because their body can has just is able to recover. They have like some genetic disposition to being able to, when we talk about football player, essentially the same amount of force of getting hit by a truck happens to them every Sunday,
Mhm.
and they wake up the next day. Some of us would not be able to get out of bed, right?
Totally.
And so there is a genetic component there, but sports and health are not synonymous. So what that means is we have to recognize that sport equals sacrificing your body for a goal. And so when we're talking about youth athletes, that goal is well-rounded development and giving them a safe place to take risk and push themselves and learn about their body.
Mhm.
Um, and that it's just important to recognize that. So the goal, we are sacrificing our body for a goal, and whether that is to play in college or just have strong legs when we're older, or just have a strong mind and a leadership quality when we're older, those are
Yeah.
all good goals, and our body is part of the risk assessment. And so recovery, I think, is important to think about the total minutes that you play in a week. Training typically, especially in soccer, is going to be harder than some of the games.
Yeah. They're
Um,
meant to, I think that's the point
yeah,
of
yeah,
the training,
exactly.
is to make the
Yeah,
games easier. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So, and especially if we're talking about something like MMA, like, you know, sometimes it only lasts like 2 rounds, right?
Mhm.
So, but when we're talking about softball, we're talking about a lot of repetition. So,
Yeah.
um, and so that's like really important to recognize. I mean, all of you have recognized that there's a lot of repetition, right? Um, and so when we kind of calculate how many hours of training and then how many like minutes that you played in the game, um, and and I mean, you can like kind of tweak this for softball and make it like, an inning equals, I think minutes still works because, innings don't have like a time. Uh, right.
Mhm.
Um, so let's take minutes, and every hour that you spend like doing the sport, maybe spend 5 minutes on recovery. That's outside of sleep and hydration. So meaning that could be meditation, it could be breathing, deep breathing, a diaphragmatic breathing, performance breathing. I would call it performance breathing, can increase your recovery. Like you can recover faster if you have a breathing practice, like something that simple. Like you literally don't have to do anything except breathe
Mhm.
and count.
Can people find those breathing practices like on YouTube and things like that?
Yeah, I'll send you an app that you can download for free, and it'll give you like a whole routine, basically. Really simple. And
Beautiful.
yeah,
I'll put that in the show notes for people who
yeah,
are looking for those resources.
yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's say 5 minutes per hour of some kind of active recovery. So active recovery would be the breathing practice, a yoga practice, my specific practice is an isometric training um, routine, and the routines I give people are in 5 and 10 minute chunks.
Mm.
And it is specifically for like flexibility, mobility, and like recovery, muscle recovery.
So could
Um,
that be also called the active recovery? That's what
yeah,
people
active
refer it to?
recovery. Yeah,
Like you're moving, but you're also like,
it's intentional. Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so a lot of people will do light bike rides just to get more blood
Mm,
flow. And so, for example, like what's really like hot right now are these like percussion guns.
yeah, like Theragun stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but guess what? Walking for 20 minutes will give you the same result as a 600, $800 percussion gun.
Wow.
Take a walk, and like so a light bike ride, you'll always see like professional athletes with a bike, like some kind of bike
Mhm, mhm.
in the
Yeah,
recovery
like
room.
tennis. We just watched the
Tennis.
US
Yep.
Open. They're
Mm,
playing these matches, and then they're getting on a bike and
yeah.
just letting
It's
their
blood
muscles
flow.
flush. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Muscle flush, yep. Taking out the trash. Lymphatic system, taking it out. Yep.
Yeah.
And, so, another one is water. Anything in water will help the muscles because there's like a pressure thing happening there.
Mhm.
So, just sitting in a pool and walking back and forth, that will help you. Um,
Yeah.
what else? I mean, even like some abdominal based exercises could really be helpful for recovery. Like really basic stuff, like 5 minutes.
Little core
um,
strength.
low core strength, yeah. That I mean, that'll hit like two birds with one stone kind of thing. So well,
Yeah.
isometrics. That's why I really like isometrics. What else? I have a whole list here.
I was gonna say, these are all
Yeah.
so good. And if there's, like, parents or coaches, like, even here, like, come up with a routine for your players, like, after a game.
Yeah.
Like, "Hey," 'cause, I mean, you can do the math and do the math for them and say, "You need this amount of recovery." Like,
Yep.
"Hey, let's go on a family walk after dinner."
Yep.
Or, after a long weekend of games, let's do this however many minute recovery all together, and, like, let's
Mhm.
stretch. Let's do, like, a little
Mhm.
family bike ride. Like, just find ways to add recovery, and like you said at the very beginning, it's meant to be fun.
Mhm.
And I think through this conversation, I hope that maybe you share this with your athlete, this conversation, so they know the importance of it. Because
Yeah.
the whole point of recovery, and tell me if you disagree, is
Mhm.
so that you can be able to perform better the next time you
Yeah.
go perform.
Yeah. I mean, what's not fun is not being able to walk and like
Yeah,
holding your butt every time you want to sit
right.
down. You're like, oh, like
Yeah,
that's not fun. But being able to, have a nice meal and be excited about your game, like that's way more fun. Like
yeah,
yeah,
totally.
it has to be fun. It's not weighing you down, guys. It's not gals. It is, it is something that, can be it should be like kind of part of like the discipline and the routine. Because
Mhm,
again, like sport doesn't automatically equal health. But can you make sports more healthy? That's the
right.
title of your podcast today.
Deal.
Yes.
You just chose it for me. Amazing. Okay, so I do have a question though, because whenever somebody says no days off, sometimes it makes me like mad a little bit because, if you've played
Yeah.
a full week of games and then you're supposed to go do something physical the next day, like, do you prefer that person to do an active recovery, or like, how do you know when you should do active recovery versus like literally rest and sleep and just not
Yeah.
do anything?
I mean, like I think you need to knock out that equate like my bank equation, like the deposits and like, take in the credits, right? Like
Yeah.
um, if you played 85 minutes the whole week, wait, I just made that up. Like it's not a whole lot of effort. Like if you really can't get off the couch for 20 minutes, like I don't know, that makes me cringe a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I'd say like stick to that equation, find something that that you enjoy. Don't force yourself. Like find a way to make it fun. Um, there's like like listening to a podcast while you're on your walk. Like make it fun. Like I'm only going to listen to this podcast when I do my recovery stuff.
Mm.
I'm only going to listen to it's like that um like built-in kind of reward system. You want to do something like that. But if you're going max every day for a couple hours, just know that the bank account's going to go negative. At
Yeah.
some point something's going to break. And I just think like you can get away with a couple weeks of that. Look, let's say. But you can't do it for 6 months. enactment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And which is like the opposite of what we see on TV, right? Let's go back to tennis. They get a week off a year. um and they play for hours at a time. So, it's like when we talk about tennis players, like at the high level, their recovery has to be so spot on because they just literally don't have the time. Um, and if they don't, like they will get injured. Like that's just a part of the game. If you don't respect this, like, you know, that recovery is absolutely needed, then, you're going to run out of gas. You're going to run out of money in the bank account there. Sleep and, but also if it's like, if you have a choice and it's like, okay, I can get my 7 full hours of sleep or, this 10 minutes of recovery, I guess choose sleep.
Mhm.
But it's also like just 10 minutes. Like if you do a breathing practice for 6 minutes, that's as long as the that's like a minimal effective dose of breath work is 6 minutes. Um, I mean, that also helps you sleep. Like,
Right.
is that okay?
Yeah. It all kind
Um,
of works itself
yeah,
together.
it all kind of works together. But the 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 hashtag no days off, hashtag just do it also make me cringe because I think the most well-rounded athletes are going to learn that there's so much more to thriving in the game than the wins and losses and the batting average and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They know, you know. Um and yeah, I think it's just like, a holistic approach to athletics um is yeah, is the thing that is going to help us not burn out as well. Like a burnt out 16-year-old, like what's like that's pretty miserable, right?
Mhm.
You know, they're doing too much. So it's like also like help preventing burnout and help preventing a really negative attitude towards the sport. Because some people burn out and they're like never again. They like don't recover. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
that happens a lot to our young ladies.
That's
um,
true.
yeah. So preventing burnout, I'd say, is a really, really good thing to do.
Yeah. The last question I want to ask you before we dive into some Five to Thrive here.
Uh-huh.
You and I talked about this off the cuff, but I had read studies. My background is in a lot of anatomy and sports performance as well, and I read a study about how ACL tears. You talked about hormones a little bit,
Mhm.
and how it can dictate, you know, injury.
Mhm.
But it said something along the lines of, and I think it was on like a soccer study, that a very large majority of ACL tears come during an athlete's period.
Mm.
And I know most people are like, "Wait, we're talking about this," but I think it's a very important topic,
Mhm.
um, because your body's in a weaker state than it is when you're not on it.
Yeah, it
So,
literally is. Yeah,
can
it
you
is.
briefly kind of talk about that and how we should be
Yeah,
aware of this?
it has to do with progesterone. And basically when we have an influx of that, our body is tired and it needs more resources. So, I think the big takeaway from studies like that should be that we should teach our young ladies that we live on a 4-week cycle, or
Mhm.
sorry, a monthly cycle, and that we have 13 periods a year and that we need to like learn those cycles and that we can support our body. um and so it has to do it'll play out in our social behaviors, meaning, that, how we react to people, how we react to, certain situations, like we just don't have the bandwidth to do it, and that's
Mhm.
okay. Like it's like the message from society is that we need to be consistent all the time like men. And I think that is dangerous because it teaches us also to not learn about these cycles in our body. So
Right.
one of the cycles of menstruation And right before that, our body is a little bit weaker and we need more sleep and we're going to retain water. Um, there's a lot of like physiological reasons for this that have to do with, you know, the cycle. But I mean, all in all, like our muscles respond to these hormones. And so does our blood flow and so does our like mental bandwidth.
Mhm.
So, understanding the different cycles can maybe teach you that, okay, you can take a little bit of magnesium before you sleep to get that deeper sleep, which I would say just do all the time. But,
Mm.
um, and, like it'll give you a little bit more focus on that recovery or saying like being able to like talk to your coach about certain things like, "Hey, I'm not able to do this today. Can I sit aside for the next like 30 minutes and like collect myself?" I mean, if a coach says
That's
no to
so
that,
hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and like just but it's also like I found like one of the most effective things I did as in my strength and conditioning like injury prevention program was created an open line of communication.
Mm.
Like, the fact that the parents and the kids had someone to talk to about their injuries was huge,
Yep.
okay? Because guess what? Coaches aren't qualified to deal with injuries. And some coaches certainly aren't qualified to deal with periods. We all know and like but it might be a good idea for them to learn about the cycles too.
Yeah.
Um
That's why we're here. This is why I
yeah.
asked you the question. I think the more you know about it, the better your
Yeah.
athlete's going to be. And that's the whole point of coaching, I hope, is so that you can help your athlete become the best
Yeah.
version of them. And not understanding that aspect is you're setting them up for failure. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to know this stuff for sure.
Yeah. And I mean at the most, the intervention honestly would be certain just different types of food at different times of the month. It's like so cool that our body will respond to protein at protein more than and will utilize carbs in another cycle. So
Mm,
it's like that's kind of cool too. And I know like nutrition is like just a hard topic. It's so hard. But, I also know that there are families that are focused on that, and they would want that type of information and input, and, it's like a nice way to, um, introduce a really important piece of like, self-help education that is totally ignored.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, so I'd be an advocate for that. If any parents, there is a book out there and it's got a very, oh man, there's a couple books out there. I'm going to share a couple books about female
Yeah.
anatomy that are
Yeah.
for, like, when I read this, I was like, oh my God, every 17-year-old needs to read this. Like,
Yeah. Send them over
going
to
into
me and
one,
I will
yeah.
throw them in the show notes. This is going to be the episode with the most show notes.
Ah, I
Just
love it.
for a good
Yeah.
way, like just so
Yeah.
people can have access to some of this information.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you've been on. This has been so enlightening.
Yeah. Well, I'd be happy to do it again. I love female athletes. I love helping,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I love that I have so much experience to be able to help people. And there's
Yeah.
not enough of
That's why
me.
we do what we do, for sure. I can definitely sense it in you for sure. How can people follow you? Like that are just so intrigued and entrapped by you? Where do you hang
Yeah.
out the most?
Instagram is my
Mm,
spot. Jennifer_Simone_Schwartz, and that's where I share so much of my personal like and entrepreneurial journey. Like we haven't even talked about like all the entrepreneurial things that I love and, being able to be a female boss and, you know, and have leadership in that is such a awesome part of my life and I'm so grateful for it. Um so I'm doing and there's a lot of workout videos there too, but it's not for like instruction. It's just like I enjoy working out, so I share a lot of it.
mhm.
So I have that. And then the podcast is at thinkfitbefitpodcast.com. We have 3 shows on all aspects of intelligent exercise. And we cover everything from, I've a episode coming up with a professional women's soccer player to today we have an episode about life coaching, but it all goes into like these silos of self-care and making it fun and making it enjoyable. So Think Fit Be Fit podcast is probably the best spot. Um, if you're in the Virginia area, I have a business called impactyourfitness.net. And then my resume, my CV is at jennifersimoneschwartz.com.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. And all of those will be added in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to get a hold of you. But this has been so enlightening. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
Yeah.
Some 5 to Thrive? Okay, great. I love asking this question to every single guest that I have on the show. But
Okay.
who was a huge role model for you growing up?
Oh, a huge role model for me growing up. Gosh. Um, yeah, I mean, I was into some skiing. So there was a woman called Peekaboo Schwartz. We have the same last name. So I was really into her. Um, the US women's national team, I'd say between those two, it would
Yeah,
be those would be it.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, good answers. What is your favorite form of recovery? Like your favorite form? Like when you know you need it most, you're gonna do
Oh,
this.
isometrics.
Mm. We didn't
Yeah.
even dive into a whole lot of isometrics. We'll have you on for another
Yeah, we
episode.
gotta talk about
Just
isometric.
isometric training.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deal, it's happening.
Yeah.
Amazing. What is one functional movement that you think everybody should be doing?
Oh. Diaphragm breathing.
Mm. Okay,
Yeah.
good. We talked about
Yeah.
it. We're gonna have
Yeah.
in the show notes a way to work on it. Amazing.
Yep.
Perfect. Question number 4. What is one
Yeah.
advice that you would like to give younger Jen if you could go back?
Oh. Um, I haven't thought about this in a minute. Um, I would say like let people help you more.
Mm,
Mm, toxic independency. Yeah. Recovering
yeah,
from that.
I think I have a little bit of that too,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a good one. Well, before I ask the final question, thank you again. This has been so fun. Definitely topics that we've never discussed on the podcast. So,
Oh,
first
I love
timer.
it.
Can't wait to have you on to talk about more, especially the isometrics. I think
Okay.
this is a good first step into a lot of the work that you do.
Yeah.
Um, and I hope people that are either going through injury or like trying to avoid, even though you said it's not possible, everybody will. But like the perspective of like taking it and being like, it's just part of the process. Like
Mm.
injury is not a life sentence; it's a
Mhm.
learning curve.
Mhm.
I just love how you elaborated so much on that. So
Mm.
thank you. This has been so
Mm.
fun. Final question is, if anybody could take one thing from this conversation, and it can't be breathing because you just said that one, what do you think people should go back and maybe listen to, re-listen to, or relearn?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think like the pain not being uh totally indicative of like a tissue injury is a big one. So the take the like phrase that people in my world use, um, you know, pain pain and tissue injury are not like the same.
Mm-hmm.
So back to that pain stuff. Um, I think, yeah, because it's also like don't ignore pain as well. Like it is a teacher. It is like part of the process. So numbing pain is also a bad idea, like in many forms. um, so I think, yeah, that pain conversation, definitely.
Yeah, and when you say numbing pain, are you referring to like icing or using like
NSAIDs are probably one of my pet peeves, I gotta say.
okay,
Like
okay.
they just don't like it's not a good idea. If like your kid gets banged up like at like in a sliding incident, right? The answer is not like, Advil. Like let that tissue heal and anything you do provide, it should be to help the healing process, not stop it.
Mm,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Dang,
Yeah.
that's like a whole hour conversation
I
itself.
know. Oh man, I get really steamed up on that one.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
think that's what, and that's the same thing like you were saying earlier, how the parents have influence on their kids.
yeah.
Normally, how I mean, I'm even gonna say it, my dad, if he's having
Mhm.
back pain, he takes a pill like right
Mhm.
away.
Mhm.
And through a back surgery, he's finally realized that like, no, he needs to develop his core. Like that is one of
Mhm.
the main
Mhm.
reasons why he's having this pain. So
Mhm.
he has learned that much later. But like it used to be just take an Advil, take an Advil. And now
Mhm.
I can't remember the last time I took an Advil because I've learned what you're preaching.
Mhm.
It's like your body and your joints, they need to know how to recover themselves.
Mhm.
And you limit that by taking this
Mhm.
like these
Mhm.
pills.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole, like, just automatic thinking, because if you go to the and yeah, and if you go to the orthopedic with, like, something more persistent than, I sprained my ankle, they'll give you prescription anti-inflammatories.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's just, like, not that helpful.
Right.
Unless, like, you're making a living off of, let's say you're, using your hands for work. Like, there's a really good, um, justification for, the need to keep going. But if we have a full roster and you've got girls sitting on the bench that are ready to go, and you have this, like, open and honest communication about what's really happening, and that, you're, um there's always gonna be an opportunity if you, like, stay with this, like, team. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna lose an opportunity based on, this one exact moment. Like, you just by being where you are, you've already created opportunity, and you're gonna continue to do that. You know what I mean? There's, like, a patience factor here. So, and that's also, like, the parents, it's like, "Oh, no, we have to get to the showcase, da, 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 da." I'm like, "There's, like, literally showcases all the time." Like, and we have videos, you know?
Yeah. Like play the
Yeah.
long game. We have
Yeah,
to
play the
start
long
playing the
game,
long
that's it.
game.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Maybe
Hmm,
we should well, you already
yeah.
decided the episode
No, no,
title,
no,
but
play the
that
long
one's
game's good too.
but that's what it is. And that's the
Yeah,
work that you do. It's like how
yeah,
can an athlete play the long game?
yeah,
And recovery is all of that. This entire conversation is all of that. But so
yeah.
grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's so
The rapid
fun.
fire wasn't too bad. I know I told you
No.
ahead of time. It's like you might be nervous for these. Just answer just go with your gut.
Well, I was most
They were
stumped
great.
with the first one. I was like, "Wait, who?"
Oh, I know that one's kind of threw a little curveball, but
Yeah,
super grateful to have you on. I'm excited to do it again, and
yeah,
I hope people really take advantage of the resources that you're giving, from the books to the breathwork stuff. This has been so much fun.
absolutely agree. Thank you so much.